Do we have too much government?
We need to put people ahead of corporate profits.
This system is so lopsided.
This threat is a real threat to democracy.
And I think that's really important. That's something we haven't been doing in this country for a long time.
Where do you start? What do you do? How do you do it?
Access to Democracy is sponsored by Thomson Reuters, providing legal professionals with the intelligence, technology, and human expertise they need to find trusted answers. Products include Westlaw, Practical Law, and Firm Central legal practice management software for small law firms. Thomson Reuters, the answer company. Online at thomsonreuters.com. Access to Democracy is made possible in part by a donation from Firefly Credit Union. Firefly is the new name of U.S. Federal Credit Union, which has proudly served the financial needs of the Greater Twin Cities community since 1925. At Firefly, we guide our members forward and give them the power to chase dreams by delivering the financial solutions they need to get ahead. From checking accounts to mortgages, we'll light the way. We are Firefly Credit Union, and this is Life Illuminated. And Dr. Charles Crutchfield of award-winning Crutchfield Dermatology in Eagan, acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians. A Minnesota native who trained at the Mayo Clinic, Dr. Crutchfield personally treats all patients and states that experience counts and quality matters. Crutchfield Dermatology. Look good, feel great, with beautiful skin.
Welcome to Access to Democracy. I'm your host, Roxanne Meshar, and my guest with me today is Chris Farrell from Minnesota Public Radio. Chris, welcome to Access to Democracy. So good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So the topic today is of interest to just about everybody, whether you're young or old, because we all have to plan for it, and that's retirement and what's going on with ideas around retirement and how we think about it now and prepare for it and what options are available. So the landscape is changing, so retirement today.
Well, it definitely is changing, and there's a rethinking of the second half of life. And because if you go back, and we all sort of have this image of you go to school, you work, and then you retire. And retire means not working. You say goodbye to your colleagues for the last time. You embrace a life of leisure. And that has sort of been the mental map, the mental expectation that a lot of us have with retirement. And what has been happening since around the mid-1980s, early 1990s, is this rethinking about retirement. And the part that I have focused on a lot is continuing to work well into the traditional retirement years. Now, it may be part-time work, flexible work, contract labor, temp work, it may be another full-time job, it may be starting your own business. There's lots of things that people are doing. But there is this fundamental shift in the way people are thinking about retirement, which is both for personal reasons, purpose, meaning, and also for financial reasons, which is if you have an income coming in, if you haven't saved that much throughout your life, which most of us haven't, that income coming in can really affect your financial circumstances.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit before we get into a lot of the changes, how people might prepare for retirement, and even before that, how did you get into this topic? Let's start there. How did you arrive here? Let's begin there.
Well, for a large, it's been as a journalist, I've sort of had two focus on my journalism. One has been in personal finance, and then the other is in economics. And if you think about the last 25 years, one of the major topics in economics and in personal finance has been the aging of the population and retirement. Because to a large extent, personal finance the past 25 years has been about saving for retirement. 401ks, IRAs, how do you manage your money? Do you put it into stocks? Do you put it into bonds? Diversified portfolio. And the aging of the population deals with Medicare, Social Security, various old age programs, what's going to be the impact on our economy.
And we had baby boomers, 70 million of them, who were on that path, if you will.
Right. So from now until 2030, about 8,000 baby boomers a day will turn 65. But the fundamental shift here is not just a boomer effect. Much as boomers would like to say that it is, this is a fundamental shift in the aging of the U.S. population. And what that reflects is we have smaller families and we're living longer. And so the shift into our population is we are moving toward a society where there are going to be a lot more 65 plus or 60 plus or 50 plus, however you want to measure it, than before.
And so what attracted you to this particular topic, or what, economics is attractive in and of its own right without this twist?
But the part that intrigued me the most is that if you think about the last 2 decades, and you mentioned the economics of an aging population, it's as if people have read, I don't know if you ever read Hunter S. Thompson, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. It was Fear and Loathing about an aging America. And it was a dire picture, and you're just going to have just too many old people, and they're going to be supported by too few young people, and it's going to weigh down our economy, and our economy is not going to grow, and it's going to lose its dynamism, and it's just going to collapse in and of itself. And that is, without much exaggeration, that's kind of been the picture that has been painted for about 20 years. We're now there, actually, in terms of the sense of, the leading edge of the baby boom generation is filing for Social Security, is filing for Medicare. And yet this fundamental gloom and doom about the aging population struck me as fundamentally wrong. And that markets do work. And this kind of forecast didn't seem right. And so that's, started to do a lot of research into it. And you come into things that baby boomers are well educated. They're healthier than previous generations. Disabilities are down compared to previous generations. You have this fact that, work is a social institution. When they do the surveys of people retired, and they say, what do you most miss about your previous life? And you would think it'd be money, salary coming in. And it's always number 1 or number 2 is colleagues, suppliers, vendors, the people that you met. Money's on the list, but it's actually fairly far down on that list. There's also something really bizarre in the thought that you enter the workforce at, say 20, 22 years. And then you work, and all the ups and downs of your career, you pick up a lot of skill, a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience. You can be useful, you can be helpful. And then at age 60, or whatever age you want to pick, you all of a sudden say, all that knowledge, all that skill, all that experience, I'm never going to use it again. I'm just walking away from that.
Which is crazy. Yeah.
And for most people, they want to continue to use that knowledge, that skill, that experience. Now, they may want to say goodbye to their colleagues for the last time. I don't want to be around you anymore. And they may not want to be being told, let's do more with less, which has been the mantra, for a long period of time. But they might want to take their skills, and many do, into a different sector of the economy, be surrounded by different people, different mission. You see a lot of people moving from the for-profit sector or their professions into the not-for-profit sector, for example. Right, but it is this search. It's different than some previous generations because this is not volunteer work. This is a search for meaning and money, purpose and a paycheck. This is what people are really searching for, and I think it's incredibly exciting. And this is very different. And so people are describing themselves as retired, and yet they're really not. I was talking to this former Mennonite minister. And he said, he kept his careers like about 10 years. So he'd been a truck driver for about 10 years, and he was a welder for about 10 years. He'd been a Mennonite minister for about 20 years, and he was age 60, and it was time for him to retire. And what he was doing was constructing a life. So he was going to work on his home, and they had a little cabin. This is outside, this is in Tennessee, and a little cabin. He's going to work in that cabin 3 days a week. And then he was going to work something part-time 2-3 days a week, and then the rest of it was his time. And he actually picked up a job, it was okay, but he was driving the disabled around town and getting not paid that much to be doing it. And he was looking for something else, but he'd say, people would say, what are you doing? And he would describe what he's doing, and they'd look at him like, they wouldn't get it. So he'd say, I'm retired. And they go, oh, okay. And then have another drink and go wander off. So a lot of times when people say they're retired, if you actually ask them, what are you doing? You'll find out that they may be consulting, they may be volunteering, they may be doing
Penny
something for a
things,
stipend, a number of different
various
things.
activities. And that vision of retirement that's changed so drastically maybe over the last couple of decades offers many new possibilities and new ways of putting a life together or making meaning out of the previous life work, but using, like you said, using those skills in a different way. So the only thing that's come up too is there's been a wrench tossed in the work where for boomers especially, where they might have saved a lot, 401ks and so forth, but maybe blew through that with the crash of the housing market, because part of that savings was housing, and now, poof, that went away for many, many people. So we have, with the deregulation of the financial or banking sector, issues with mortgages and things going on, so people suddenly see not only is retirement not going to happen the way they envisioned, but they need to construct a different way to understand it, because their savings are not there, and relying on your house value to continually go up isn't a strategy, isn't going to work. Speak to that a little bit.
No, well, I think it's there's a wide spectrum, and for a lot of people, it's a spectrum on need. People who need to continue to be earning an income, and then there's a spectrum of people who want to continue to be earning an income, and everything in between. But I think for a majority of people, it's actually both. And even if your house didn't explode in value, or you didn't sell it, so it's come back. If you take a look at medical expenses, Fidelity comes out with this annual calculation. And so for a couple that retired in 2015, age 65, on Medicare, they can look forward to, and we can put that in quotes, I think, to about $240,000 in medical bills aside from their Medicare.
Yes.
And aside from long-term. This is not including nursing home or long-term care. So this is also starting to seep in. And so, yes, there is an element to this of, well, it's probably not realistic. And it isn't realistic to think that you're going to work for 30 years and you're going to be able to live off your accumulated savings for the next 30 years. And that is really, I mean, that is at the core.
And even if you are, at least not in the way you were living off them before.
Right.
So many people are now kind of investigating, as you mentioned earlier, money isn't the #1 satisfaction attribute of what determines how satisfied or content or happy people are with their lives. It's pretty far down on the list once your basic needs are met, and people are beginning to see there's all kinds of ways they can live life a little bit differently, use those resources differently, and still have a very full, rich, involved, interesting life. Maybe you can mention some ways you've come across that.
Well, also, I mean, part of it too is, you know, images are really important in shaping our expectations. So if you think back, when I started getting into this, and I'd mentioned to people that, are you going to be working longer? Well, they'd be going, great, so I'm going to be a greeter at a big box retailer, right? Thanks, Chris.
No one wants to do that.
And because we have one image, which is the correct image, that for most of American history, I mean, you can keep going back, but in American history, you worked until you died. That is actually, that's what you did.
And you were lucky if you lived till 60. Many people didn't.
Right. So you worked until you died. So that has one image. And then, because of Social Security in 1935, the Medicare in 1965 and Medicaid, but most importantly, the post-World War II boom, which was an incredible boom, the golden age of economic growth. For really the first time in history, a large group of people could think about retiring a way that was only available to the very wealthy prior to the 1930s. So we're now in the 1950s, 1960s. And it was such a powerful image that even though my parents never retired to Florida, they never went to a retirement community, I could sit with them and we watch this episode of Seinfeld when he drives down to Florida and visits his parents, and we all know what this is about. Very, very powerful image. So when you say work longer, what's the image that comes to mind? There is really, we're at the moment of experimentation. We're trying to construct this. And so one of the exciting things, I think, for all boomers right now is this is the period of experimentation, which, by the way, have you ever gone through experimentation in organizations, you know, unfortunately some of them don't work out.
Correct.
And that's the hard aspect of a lot of this. But the exciting aspect of is as we kind of rethink this second half of life, and as it becomes disassociated with just sort of leisure in isolation, and you're no longer useful, and you can't be productive, and you're not creative, and all these things that are being rethought and reimagined, the real excitement is for my youngest son, who's 24 years old now. When he's 50, when he's 55, he's going to have a very different image of the second half of life than the current 55-year-old has in the second half. Because right now, it's kind of like a DIY world.
True, true. And not only that, a lot of the boomers are looking at millennials and taking a page out of their book because they're structuring their lives very differently and not following the path that the boomers followed for many reasons. They're laden with student debt. They don't have access to the housing market that boomers had, and there's a lot of pressures on them even to save it for retirement, because if you're not working regular hours or regular salary, that's difficult to do. So they're restructuring their lives in a very different way, often moving into urban areas and doing other things, but still doing some very powerful things with their lives. And I have total faith in that generation when I see what they're doing and what they're involved in and what they give their time and effort to. But I think boomers are watching that, or
Absolutely.
They should be, you know.
And just as an aside, I just have to say, with the millennials, they do have the student loan debt, and it's really unfortunate that we have relied as much on debt to finance education. Nevertheless, that is an investment that pays off over a lifetime. I've never understood why then people say, oh, it's so terrible, they can't buy a home. And why would they want to buy a home? Why would you want to take on even more debt to buy a home, which is a depreciating asset?
Yeah.
When you are invested in your education, which you can pay off over a lifetime, but it opens up all kinds of exciting opportunities.
Although, well,
buying a home, I think, is just one of those things like,
right. Not sure buying a home makes sense for everyone. However, the student debt issue is a real
That's
issue.
a real issue.
Yeah,
yes,
that prevents them from doing many things, which is starting new businesses and doing all kinds of things because they're heavy. They've got that debt around their anvil around their neck, and it's really a public good or a common good that we all benefit from. So to ease that debt burden in a number of different ways, I think would be a good thing going forward, certainly for that group.
Oh, yeah.
But they are doing different things with their lives, and when you watch them and see how they are doing things and how they are structuring living opportunities and options which are different from just buying a house in the suburbs, which is more or less the only option many boomers considered or were exposed to, and they're doing things differently. They're trying different things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, very interesting. So, education, help or a barrier? What do you think going forward in terms of if you're starting to retire? Does it make sense to go back to school? Does it make sense to invest in your education when you're 56, 57, 65, 70?
Most of the time, absolutely yes. Now, it's no different than when you're a young person. Now, undergraduate's kind of a different world, but you're thinking about, you've graduated from college, you're thinking about graduate school. It's kind of, you go through the same sort of calculations. How much is it going to cost me? Am I going to have to take debt? What kind of opportunities is it going to open up for me? Is it worth it? But for a lot of people 55 plus, 50 plus, at this particular point in time, what they're doing with their education is getting certificates. And so the certificate is giving you access or giving you a credential or giving you some credibility. And there, what you really just need to do is check it out. Make sure that this credential, talk to people who got the credential, talk to people who got the certificate. Ask them, people are going to tell you. Did it pay off? Was it worth it? Was it worth your time? And they're also trying to limit how much money they're spending. And that's what certificates, a short period of time, limited amount of money. But still, you don't want to waste your time or your money.
True.
So really check it out. Longer term, as we look out over the next 30 years, the big shift in higher education is going to be opening up higher education to the 50-plus population. And so my forecast is in 30 years, when you walk around a college or a university, you won't even be thinking about it, but it will be from the ages of about 18 all the way up to age 80. Whereas right now, it is largely, even in colleges and universities which have executive education programs and other programs, I mean, it's still dominated by the 20-year-olds.
Personally, I can give anecdotal evidence. After 10 years of teaching at St. Thomas, they have a wonderful 55-plus program. It's minimally, you know, just I think even under $100, and you can take whatever courses you want and put them toward a certificate later or whatever you'd like to do. And I have to say, after teaching courses, it was very common in almost every class for me to have a number of adult learners, people who were 50 and older, who wanted to audit the course, either for credit or just to audit because of interest. And in either case, I always welcomed it because they raised the elevation of conversation in the classroom. People who have a lifetime of experience ask very different questions, and they also have really great listening skills with other students and are kind of, they're pretty respectful of their experience too, and both groups really benefited from each other. So for me as a professor, it was wonderful to have them in the classroom.
Yes. And every professor I ever talked to has said the exact same thing. The difference that I see over, say, the next 30 years is it's still going to have a very practical orientation. I mean, right now, most colleges and universities have wonderful programs, and they are wonderful. You never took the class about Renaissance Italy, or you never took a class in Michelangelo, and so they have these offerings for adults, which are with professors, and they're great. But what I see is that colleges and universities are going to shift because there's going to be more people coming in, sometimes to take that Renaissance Italy class, and sometimes because they want to burnish their diploma, their skills, their credentials, because they want to open up a new opportunity over here, because you're shifting, you want to go in the nonprofit sector, and you've picked up some, you did some accounting over here in the for-profit. Nonprofit accounting is a little bit different. You're going to come in, you're going to pick up some additional skills, make your move over there. And right now, a lot of colleges and universities mentally acknowledge this future. They know it. They're having conversations about it. But it's an enormous shift in their focus, and it's an enormous shift in the institution. But I think it's one of the most exciting aspects in higher education over the next 30 years.
It's a different vision, and it is changing, and it is exciting. The other twist is the flip side of that. I'm an example of that. Many other people are too, and even at the community college level, seniors are becoming the teachers, so they're leaving work and they have expertise in an area, and they maybe worked 30 years in economics or in industry or business, and they're well qualified to teach. So I've noticed now in community ed and other places too that more and more the teachers are 50 plus, which is great. They bring a lifetime of experience, and it's very helpful. So, yeah, and people sign up for that, and I'm interested always when you see somebody who has 30 years of experience in economics or whatever. Maybe you want to take that course from them, so it's interesting. So on both sides, student and the teaching side too, it's very interesting. We just have a few minutes left, but I'm always curious for somebody who does journalism for a living. You encounter many people and situations and topics and stories. What is one of the most interesting stories that you've ever come across, or what was memorable for you?
Oh, there are just so many. I mean, when I wrote the book on retirement, been traveling around the country, and you just meet all kinds of people who are just doing interesting things. And met a gentleman who was down in South Carolina, and he'd been in the auto industry, worked for Ford for many years, and they moved down to a little farm in South Carolina.
That's a lifestyle switch.
It's a real lifestyle switch, but he ended up having a little business which was repairing old tractors. And then he decided not to stop. He was in his 80s now. He just wasn't doing it for money, but anybody who had anything old that needed to be repaired, they just kind of would leave it there, and he'd get to it, and he just loved tinkering, and he'd be doing all his repair stuff. And so, you know, you just meet people, and you meet people who are teaching in inner cities, and people who are taking music into Indian reservations, and all kinds of fascinating things that people are doing. So it's one of the nice things about journalism is that if you can formulate a question, if you're curious, if you're interested in something, you can go out and do a story.
That's true.
And you know, you have a conversation with people, and it always opens up new worlds.
I'm always intrigued too with people who manage to take their skills, do something new with it, do something that is not only exciting and interesting for them, but benefits their community as well. So it's a win-win all the way around, maybe in a way that they couldn't do it when they were working in the business world or in the corporate or traditional environments. So.
Exactly. So one of the most practical things about this rethinking of the second half of life, and we've had the conversation's been dominated by money, and not just money's important.
Yes.
If you don't have money, it kind of hurts, right?
Yes,
That's a bad thing. But as you're nearing that time when you're thinking about retirement, or you start having conversations about retirement, you're talking to your friends about it, I really think that the real question to be asking yourself is, what do I want to do next? And to talk to your friends, talk to your network, talk to your colleagues, get some input about what it is other people think you could do next. And age discrimination is a real thing, but it's not real with your network. They just know you, they know what you can do. And explore what might be your options, and then recognize that you probably won't figure it out up front.
Yes.
It's all an experiment. You go off and try something, but then you meet some new people, and then a new opportunity opens up for you, and you try something else.
Even if you try something and it doesn't work, now you know what doesn't work. So
exactly.
You can move on to something else that might work.
And every entrepreneur would tell you that the most valuable thing, or one of the most valuable things, is when you learn to say no, or when you learn that this is not something that I want to be doing. And all of us like to say yes, right? We want to try things out. So I just think that is the conversation to be having. And to also, the way a lot of people are thinking about retirement is as a sabbatical. So I've always wanted to have a sabbatical. Never been able to take a sabbatical, unless you're a lawyer, or certain people, university professors get to take sabbaticals. Most of us can't take a sabbatical. And when it turns out, I think retirement really is a sabbatical. People may take a year off. They may take 2 years off. But there's this sort of thinking about, well, what do I want to be doing? Volunteering. Is there some sort of job I want to be doing? Should I be bringing in some income? And then what you find out is that within a year or two, because it's their network they're tapping into, they're not trying to, you're not filling out a form and trying to go through and hand it, because the algorithm's never going to accept you, right? It's just, we know this. So you're going through your network, you're going to the people you know, you're going down to the corner hardware store and say, hey, I've been a good customer for 30 years. Would you hire me part-time? What do you think? Well, you never know. They might say yes. When my dad retired, he loves supporting local businesses, and he retired at 74, and he went to every single one of them and said, I retired. What are you going to do for me? And everyone cut him a permanent discount on future business. So you never know what people are going to respond.
You never know. It's very true.
But it is this question, what do I want to do next? And there's no one answer, and the answer will probably change as you get older and as time goes on, as you meet new people. But the money's important, but what do you want to do next? I think that's the real key question.
And it may not be one thing. It may be
multiples.
A number of things, exactly.
Exactly.
So what about for you? If you could go on sabbatical, what would you do for a year?
Well, the thing is, I do what I'm doing. This is the problem. Because I interview people, and I walk away, and I say, oh, this is wonderful. I could do that. And then about a day or two later, I think, well, I actually like what I'm doing. So I want to write another book, go talk to more people, and
more conversations,
more
books in your future.
Exactly.
We just have a few seconds left, but for people who want to connect with you and maybe know of a story or have something interesting to share, what's the best way for them to contact you?
The best way would be my email address, cfarrell@npr.org.
Perfect. Very good. So they can contact you there. This show, of course, which is usually done by volunteers, is our show will be posted on Access to Democracy website soon, so people will be able to watch the show there.